Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Economy and You with Chris Leatham. Hi. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking with a very special lady who is an author of a book, a former legislator, and is now doing speaking tours and back in Hawaii. Welcome, Lyla.
Thank
It's
you,
Lyla
Chris.
Berg.
Thank you.
Thanks
nice
for being
to
on the
see you
show
again.
today, Lyla.
Aloha. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So, this show that I do here every week, I'm always looking for interesting people who've got an interesting story to tell and have had a variety of experiences and sort of finding their own journey in life. And you've had an interesting one.
Yes, and you know, when especially the youngers come and interview me and ask me if I plan to be in the legislature, if I plan to be a school principal, if I planned, my resume, I have to honestly say to them, I didn't. I grew up in Hawaii. I went to college on the mainland. I was really planning on working in Vienna, because I speak German and French fluently. I was planning on working for the UN, and someone asked me a question, I came back to the mainland, and it's really about being open to whatever the question is asking. So, I lived on Molokai and rode rodeo and raised goats.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was great. It was fabulous.
Now, you did that when you were a kid or as an adult?
No, as the vice principal at the high school.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Now, was that part of this your lifestyle, or was that something that went along with
living there? So
living there.
I grew up in Hawaii. Went to school on the continent. My father passes away. Vietnam War happens. I'm very distraught with America. I go to Europe because my father was German.
Okay.
And while I was there was a professor at the University of Salzburg who said I'm an American, and if I ever wanted to work, I needed an American degree. Come back to Georgetown, get an advanced degree from American, find myself at home and teaching at Kailua High School.
Wow, that's a real shift.
Huge.
Yeah,
huge.
That's like I'm going to the UN, but now I'm teaching high school or at the high school.
Yeah, and I think in reflection, and it came out as I was writing, my father was German, Dutch, French, my mom from Germany, my mom from the Philippines, and I grew up as what's known now as a third culture kid.
Oh.
Living and belonging everywhere, but really not feeling at home anywhere. And so coming back to Hawaii after I got my college degrees was, for me, temporary. Started teaching at Kailua High School, went into the administrative program. I went to Molokai as the vice principal, and I grew up in Kahala.
It sounds
I didn't know anything about
you were
country.
doing things in the meantime. It's almost like these were things you were doing in the meantime.
Yes, and it was always in the meantime before I got married, because I'm of that generation that went to college for the MRS, not the BA.
Oh, okay.
So I think what I got from my parents was this sense of adventure, and what I discovered as I was writing my book is that when someone asks you, well, how are you going to do this? The answer is yes.
The answer is just yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to do it.
Yes, and then you step into it and you figure out how that works.
Because it's really about making that decision that you're committing yourself to something.
Exactly.
Even though you may not understand all the steps initially, or there's going to be roads and twists and turns, but what you're basically saying is decidedly, I'm not going to wait for all the lights to turn green before I go.
Yes, if I had known what the legislature was really about, I would never have run. But I love the connecting with the community. I walked my district 3 times the first year I got elected. I love talking with people, and
people don't realize just what an incredible commitment that is.
Huge.
That's a huge commitment to walk your district 3 times, knock on each door 3 times to introduce yourself. That's just an amazing amount of work.
Well, and I didn't realize it. I was the recipe. That's what you have to do.
That's right.
And particularly because I represented East Oahu from Costco to Kahala, there had not been a Democrat in the district for 25 years in that position.
Wow.
And I always went into it offering who I was, not competing with who was there. So it wasn't ever to knock somebody off. It was to offer what I could offer.
And one of the challenges, of course, for Hawaii is that we don't necessarily have the best voter turnout. I think we're like dead last in the nation when it comes to voter turnout these days.
Yes.
Yeah, if we're not dead last, we're pretty close to it. and my thought is, next time I decide to run for office, if I decide to run for office again, my thought is that one of the things I'm going to talk to people about is, voting is how you get rid of somebody you don't necessarily want to stay in office, or you're giving somebody else a chance to have a turn to present their ideas. But if you don't vote one way or the other,
right.
You don't give that person an opportunity who maybe has something novel or new energy to bring to the fore.
Yeah, and perhaps it's another way to present it, is it's not so much getting somebody out as getting someone who you can trust and believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much why I started the kids voting program 20 years ago.
That's right, you did. And that's called We Vote Hawaii?
It's We Vote Hawaii now,
because
after 18 years, the high school students thought that kids voting was too cutesy. It started out as paper ballots at official polling sites where the kids would go and they would vote on paper. We would tabulate the votes and record it, and 2 days later give them the information. So in the last election in 2014, we went online and changed the name with this idea, always the idea that the young people could influence the adult vote, because I believe deeply in the power of youth.
Yeah.
They changed the smoking laws. They influenced the seatbelt laws. And when young people decide and commit to something, magic happens. So we started this program thinking if the children understood the voting process and got excited, then the trickle-up effect would be that they would influence their parents to vote.
Well, even if they do or they don't, eventually they do come of age.
And they will vote themselves.
And vote themselves.
Exactly.
Which I think is important, because too many times I worked on a startup last year where we wanted to try to address the issue. And so we went out and surveyed a whole bunch of young people. And too much of the time the feedback was, well, my vote won't count. It's just one vote. It won't make that much of a difference. But it's the total sum of your voting and expression of your will that does change things.
Yeah, and I think those of us who are interested in the democratic process and perpetuating the freedom that voting allows, we get caught in the rhetoric of people don't care, and their vote doesn't count. That's a mantra. I think the issue is deeper. If young people in particular say that their vote doesn't count, I would pull the thread of that thinking and maybe ask them if they feel that they matter at all. Because I don't know if we really listen to young people.
Well, having introduced bills at the legislature for many years and advocated for judicial reform and other important issues that I think needed to be addressed here in Hawaii, is that one of the things that I learned is a lot of young people don't even really understand the process. Even from a basic understanding of that you create a bill, that they themselves have the power to go down to talk to a legislator and have a bill created.
Yes, and unfortunately, a large majority of young people and adults do not understand we have 3 branches of government. And there has been some discussion lately, about whether the U.S. Citizens Test is a way to measure civic learning. It's deeper than that. And if we remember the reason that public education even began, it's to create an informed public that can make decisions regarding their form of government, because we're really the only authentic form of self-governing democracy, I think, in the world. Our Constitution is the oldest. So when we talk about young people not understanding the process or even knowing their role in it, it comes down to what happens in the classroom.
I think it does. And I think it's important for parents to realize that having a discussion with your kids about process and about the election process and why it's important also is beneficial. I have one daughter that's a liberal and one that's a conservative, so we have these great debates at home, which I'm just so thankful for. It's one of those things where I can sit back and cross my arms and just listen to the opinions.
Yeah.
But the fact that they have opinions, that they're sentient.
Exactly, and you're listening.
Yes.
The kids voting program, the We Vote program, Hawaii program, was started for exactly that, because we have ballot issues. They don't only vote for the same candidates as their adults, the president and governor and state officials. They also have questions like, what should be the state instrument? You know, should water be preserved in the rivers? So every island has their own specific topics that we hope and we intend will be discussed not only in classrooms but also in homes.
Yes.
The challenge then becomes in having parents learn to listen and not impose their judgment, you know, or their opinion on the child.
That never happens. When have you ever had a parent say, you know what, I'm not going to tell you how to think about this issue, you decide for yourself?
Well, isn't that a wonderful opportunity to work with parents, you know? And
I love that.
The slogan for We Vote Hawaii is, our voices do count.
Yes.
So there's this subtle and not so subtle intention to let young people know that somebody's listening.
Somebody is listening, and the thing is there's an empowerment when you vote. And you know, and also you could consider that the beginning of being a citizen, or what your citizenry responsibilities are. You know,
definitely
participate in legislation. Go online and read some of these bills. One of the things that I have found is a lot of people are challenged when they read a bill because it feels like they're reading a second language.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes they are.
Yes. Yeah. So being able to help people understand the pros and cons of a bill. These are one of the issues that we worked on in the startup was how can we figure out a way to express the pros and cons of a bill fairly? You know, what are the consequences of this legislation? Maybe here are some potentially unintended consequences of the legislation. And we found that people, when we asked them that and gave them examples, that was something they were able to absorb. But they found reading the bill itself challenging, difficult, and you know, not always understanding the bill, and they would get frustrated and become impatient.
Well, and one of the purposes of our We Vote Hawaii program is to connect the young people and the families with who is representing them in their district, and go to them, call them, email them to find out, what does this bill really say? So we wanted to stir up a little dialogue, you know, and a little energy on this process, because it is totally not sexy to talk about voting.
Yeah.
It's sexy to talk about the war on terrorism, you know, or on drugs, or on homelessness. Those are huge, huge issues.
But they're often politicized too.
Exactly.
And therein lies the rub, because when you politicize an issue, or all the rhetoric is taking you in one direction. You know, the Republicans, of course, have addressed they're very anti-abortion versus women's rights issues. And so what happens is sometimes the rhetoric overtakes the solutions that you can present. For example, maybe we do more to preserve parenting opportunities so that our daughters, because for example, one of the time of day that most teenage girls get pregnant is between the time they get home from school and the time the parents get home from work. How do you address that? Well, you address that by more parenting. Okay, improving the parenting, or making sure that the kids have supervision.
Yes, and that was one of the topics subjects in Eva Beach for the middle school, because I also did Project Citizen while I was working with Kids Voting Program and looking at issues in the community.
Yes.
And the middle school students were telling me that sex is recreational. So I said, okay, so what does that mean? In this period of time that they're home alone and they have nothing else to do, it's natural at that age to be curious about one's body. And the kids came up with this idea. If they had more counseling at the school, not on academics, but to understand what's happening with them at this age. And if not in school, in the Boys and Girls Clubs, you know, in the organizations that substitute sometimes for parent time,
Yes.
that they would be able to at least have someone to talk to. You know, so many of our young people feel, as connected as they are with all the technology, they feel somewhat alienated and isolated from each other.
Well, you know, one of the things, online bullying has been, you know, and where, or somebody says something, and then all of a sudden at school, it gets passed around, and everybody knows somebody said something, and then it becomes an embarrassment or somebody to diminish somebody. So that's you know, in this sort of very connected world that we live in, that's an issue. So I just addressed that one issue because what happens is the rhetoric overtakes looking for other solutions.
Yes.
And addressing things like, well, how do you prevent these kinds of issues from happening in the first place? What are we doing to strengthening families and give families the support that they need? You know, or addressing what we call brittle family units. You know, new families that are just starting and they're sort of chaotic and financially. They don't know how to manage their money real well because they haven't really learned these things growing up, or maybe they didn't have that sort of structure at home.
Right.
teach them these things? And can we be addressing those issues?
Many years ago, I was the director of an effort, a statewide effort called the Civic Forum on Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would convene hundreds of people once a year in talking about the state of schools. We would also convene young people to see what their ideas were on the solutions
Mm-hmm.
to the issues that the adults say are a problem with kids. And you'd be amazed, you know, being the father of daughters,
Mm-hmm.
at how creative and how realistic they are with their proposals. Now, if we would take some of those ideas and actually introduce them in the legislature or to the Board of Education and have the young people then learn about testifying
Mm-hmm.
as a natural course of what happens in education, I think we would have a body public, you know, a civil society that
Yes.
would be more engaged and also be able to talk civilly with one another. That's the
And not necessarily have it drive, you know, when you disagree, not have it be driven by emotion,
Exactly.
but driven by the art, you know.
or an
creating-
end goal.
Or an end goal, right, yeah.
It's how can we understand each other better?
Yes.
So, and it requires a lot of self-esteem and a lot of thinking about what I think about,
Yes.
which oftentimes doesn't happen in schools.
We're going to take a short commercial break, and then we're going to come back. I want to talk a little bit about your book, get started talking a little bit about your book.
Okay.
I'm Chris Leatham. This is The Economy in You. Thank you. I will be right back. Aloha.
Okay, this is ThinkTech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, 4 to 5
Aloha.
p.m. Wednesday. Aloha. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham. This is The Economy in You. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're talking with Lyla Berg. Lyla, we were talking about sort of interesting things going on with how we should help our young people get more civically minded and engaged in a sort of civil society, from getting involved in the legislative process. And you've had your own journey and from the legislature. And then after you left the legislature, you've been traveling, right? You've done some traveling, and then you decided at some point to write a book?
Yes. When I was in the ledge, I decided at that time that I needed to run for lieutenant governor to raise the conversation and involve the neighbor islands. And I was saved from that.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, I was. You know, I never expected to run for politics. It was a challenge from my son to stop complaining and do something.
Mm.
So when that goal was not fulfilled, I started traveling and speaking, and a book came out from that. In addition, also my love for Argentine tango. So the Argentine tango theme runs through the book as what I've learned about life.
Yes.
Because being a principal and being a single mother and being in the legislature and coming from a private school and growing up in a multicultural European Asian family,
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of expectations were imposed on me.
Yes.
And
And on the book, is that you
Yeah,
on the book? Is that you
I
on the
wish. The energy is mine. The figure is a little different. And so the notion of opening your heart-soul connection came to me because as educators, as educated people, we are taught to think.
Yes.
Think and analyze and make things happen. And I grew up in a very loving household with a lot of support also from the community. So my heart, and growing up in Hawaii, you know, we have Aloha as our foundation.
That's right.
So I could make decisions and I would think with my heart, but there was something lower in my na'au, in my gut, in my intuition, in my soul, that I wasn't paying attention to. And while my resume was very full,
Yes.
because my brain was engaged,
Mhm.
I've had interesting relationships along the way. And
Yes.
I began to think about that. You know, I mean, I have a blessed life and I'm very happy. And wouldn't it be wonderful to have a special person that I could share something with?
Yes.
So, and I grew up with the Cinderella and the Snow White and, you know, all that story. And I think that that's really what it means to be human, is to be in relationships. And some people are blessed with having special relationships.
Well, you know, that's the thing about relationships. I think each relationship has its own definition, its own culture, its own sort of, I would say, sort of power dynamic.
Definitely a
Yeah.
power dynamic.
Yes. And then you know, there's things that we get out of relationships, and there's always some aspects of relationships where we want more. And then we also have to learn how to do maintenance on our relationships.
Yeah, and the Western perspective of relationships is what gets us into wars.
Yeah.
When you talk about power, somebody has it, someone wants it, someone wants to give it away, someone wants to take it. And so as I was writing the book, and also coming from a very Hawaiian perspective of personal empowerment, which is ho'omana, the enacting of your own spirit, I began to recognize that true empowerment really comes from inside.
It does.
If I have high self-esteem, if I am respectful of myself, I am of course going to respect you. And I'm going to be happy that you have what you have, and not want to take it from you.
Yes, and you know, one of the life lessons for a father who raised two daughters, when my daughter started to do well in things and then the other kids would push back on them, I said, you know, sometimes when you're king of the mountain, it's not about somebody wanting to come up to the top of the hill with you. Sometimes they just want to pull you off the mountain, you know. And you have to expect that in life.
And the next question is, how do we stay strong, right, and balanced in our own axis, which is what tango taught me.
Yes.
And how do we also have compassion for the person? Because I believe there's only two emotions in the world. It's fear and love. And so if I'm afraid that you're stronger and better and smarter than I am, I'm going to do whatever I can to compete with you to show you I'm just as good as. So at the bottom of everything really is the sense that we are enough. And that's a huge life lesson for me, definitely, and I think for many of us. When we recognize we're enough, and we're still growing, and I want to do more things, but I'm enough right now. I don't have to compete with you.
Well, one of the statements I saw in your book that I have preached to my nieces and nephews when I've counseled them on their frustrations in life is learning to be patient with ourselves. You know, we're not all rocket scientists. We can't read an engineering book and get it the first time round. Sometimes you have to be willing to sit down and read it a second and a third time.
And sometimes when you're a language major, as opposed to mathematically intelligent, we might never get those concepts. We can rough around the edges. But I think what happens in our society is we're supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to get the A in school. We're supposed to look a certain way. All the magazines and all the media. I remember I was teaching at John Robert Powers Finishing School when I first came back from college. Beautiful local girls.
That's here in Hawaii?
It was here at that time. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be tall and buxom and blonde with long legs. And I said, it's not going to happen. So how can we make the best with who we are? And that's not often said to girls, particularly. Be the best that you can be. And who is the you inside?
That's right.
Because we were packaged to look a certain way and behave a certain way and please people. And as I was writing the book, I realized that one of the bars of my cage, and I call it the Gilded Cage because life was fine. You know, I had a job and I, you know, had education and life was fine, but it wasn't complete. And the bars that came up were, what will people say? What will people say if I fail? What will people say if I succeed? What will people say if I wear this? You know, what will people say if I look this way? And so sometimes we actually criticize and have judgment on people who are different.
Well, we do, and we often do create these own barriers to our success. And you know, one of the things that, as a parent, I wanted to express to my daughters was that you need to always try to think outside the box, and go for the opportunity. Don't let fear be the thing that makes your decisions for you. Let opportunity be the driver of the decisions that you make in your life.
Yes, and I ask young people too, what's the box?
What's the box?
What's the box? Think outside the box. What's the box?
Yes.
We don't have a box, but we put ourselves in,
We
our
put ourselves
society
in a
who
box.
creates the box.
Yes.
And
Or we get pigeonholed. I guess the other term is pigeonholed. Or people are trying to figure out a way to pigeonhole us.
yes.
And sometimes we accept that, but sometimes the way that you move on is you don't accept the fact that people are going to pigeonhole you. You know, a lot of times when you apply for a job or something like that, people want to try and figure out who you are and do you fit into their idea of somebody who can do this job.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of, kind of an aside story. My girlfriend said that I should do online dating. Okay? So I did the Match.com or Harmony or whatever it is, and it says put your characteristics in. Okay, so I put everything that I enjoy, all the horseback riding and scuba diving and everything I am, languages and education. Press the button to see who matches with you, and it says no matches. Delete some of your categories. Okay, so I check things off. Okay, press the button again. No matches, delete categories. I did this twice. And finally, it dawned on me, why am I changing who I am to see who's out there when if there isn't anybody out there for me, I can be happy by myself.
Well, and again, what are they trying to do? They're trying to pigeonhole.
Exactly.
They're trying to pigeonhole, right? They're trying to categorize or quantify
Right.
you. And of course, it's important for people, I think, to stretch themselves.
Absolutely.
You know, you are your first best investment. If you're not willing to invest in yourself, how can you expect somebody else to do that?
Yes, and when we look at education, you know, and this mantra to go to college, not every young person is inclined for an academic road. However, what I always say to kids when they graduate from high school is do something. Go to trade school, be an apprentice, learn the next level of information that you need so that you can be gainfully employed for yourself.
And I hear young people say, well, this is what I want to do for my life career. And I said, well, but you can do a meantime career until you get there. Find something that you can learn to do in the meantime while you're achieving maybe a longer or a greater goal. You know, you don't necessarily have to do this or this, you know.
And something you enjoy.
Yeah,
something that
absolutely.
makes your heart sing.
That's right.
For me, Argentine tango, at the beginning, as I was writing, and the beginning of my transformation, was gigantic, because I was a competitive ballroom dancer, and everything was prescribed and sequenced and rehearsed. Argentine tango is improv.
Oh, really?
Completely.
Well, I want to talk about that. We're going to take another commercial break, and I want to talk about I love dancing. I love to dance, by the way. So when we come back, I want to talk about dancing. I'm Chris Leatham. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is Lyla Berg, and we'll be right back for more. Aloha.
Aloha, my name is Kaui Lucas. I am the host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here every Friday on ThinkTech Hawaii at 3 p.m. I invite people who are doing interesting and inspiring things in our community to help us keep it local and keep it real. Tune in any Friday, 3 p.m., and also available on our YouTube channel and my blog, kauilucas.com. Hawaii is my mainland. Aloha.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, asking you to come join us on ThinkTech Hawaii Hibachi Talk. Join me and my two hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Ender the Security Guy, every Friday from 12:45 till 13:45. See you on Fridays, and remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be.
Oh my goodness. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Chris Leatham. This is The Economy and You, and today's guest is Lyla Berg. And Lyla, talking about dance, because I grew up loving to dance. I enjoyed dancing. I took dancing lessons when I could. And I love the improvisational dancing. You know, I was the Michael Jackson moonwalker guy. I could do that really well. And then I did the disco. I was in the age of the disco era, you know, so we learned to do the disco dancing
Right,
stuff.
right.
But you went on to do tango. Now, tango, the movie, what was the movie? With the
There's
guy that blind-
Assassination Tango, but there's also The Scent of a Woman.
The Scent of a Woman, that's
Right.
the one, The Scent of a
Yeah.
Woman. And that's when I really became intrigued with tango when I saw that movie, because it was, to me, it was a phenomenal dance. It was something incredibly sexy about that.
I never even knew what tango was,
Mhm.
Argentine tango, and I've always been a dancer, hula and ballet and jazz, and I wanted to go to college to dance. But my father said,
What did Dad say?
you know, there's someone prettier, younger, more talented, more capable that will always supersede you. So go and be smart and get a job and make sure you can take care of yourself.
Uh-huh.
Best advice he gave to my brain, but my heart was always longing for some way to express myself.
Yes.
And so I went into ballroom dancing, perfect for someone who's in the box.
Yes.
And as I mentioned, everything's prescribed. Tango, I didn't even know what Argentine tango was. And it came about as a fluke because I was speaking at a conference in Peru.
Uh-huh.
And my girlfriend says, why don't you go to Buenos Aires? Just like my son said, why don't you run for office?
Uh-huh.
And so I said, okay, what do
Funny
we do
how
there?
that's always somebody else's idea.
It
isn't
is.
Yes.
And then the answer to how is yes.
Uh-huh.
Right? Okay, so I take lessons. I was in tears every day
Mhm.
because there's nothing that you can rehearse. There are steps.
Yes.
It's to the side, forward, back, around. And there, you know, Dancing with the Stars has the stage dancing with the kicks and all the skin
Oh, yeah.
showing. That's not what happens in Buenos Aires. It's a connection.
Uh-huh.
And
There's something very subtle about the movement in the
it's-
tango.
It's very subtle and very, especially in the salons of Argentina,
Mhm.
it's very small. There's no fanfare.
Mhm.
And it's about listening to yourself, listening to the partner,
Uh-huh.
and
And you
the
feel
music.
their movement, right? Is it sort of, and you're not only, but you're feeling their movement, like the way
Yes.
you dance and you're connected.
Because you as a leader don't lead me. You invite me.
Ah.
So you move in a way that gives me options. I can stand still, I can move contra body, there's a number of different variations that I
Uh-huh.
can do, and you then respond to how I replied.
So it's very dynamic.
Always moving.
The way relationships are
How
supposed
about
to
that?
be. Absolutely.
And you know, in
Uh-huh.
the salons in particular, when two people get together and there's such a connection, unless you're really focused, you know,
Mhm.
on why you're there, and I go to dance, because I always learn about me.
Mm.
I learn what makes me scared, you know, and then I relate that to life.
Yes.
I learn, you know, what makes me enjoy being with somebody,
Mhm.
because he's a reflection of me. If I'm tense, he's tense too. And so the book came out from that new understanding about relationships and about me, and how really I had the police caution tape around my heart
Uh-huh.
for many, many years. And now I'm ready just
But
to step in the
sometimes
world.
it's a little hard for people, you know, when they've gotten bruised up in a relationship sometimes they need a little recovery time.
Absolutely.
But they shouldn't maintain that posture. At some point you have to.
Right. And I have an American friend who sometimes I run into him in Buenos Aires, and I ask people, why do you dance? That's
Mhm.
how the book got started. Why do you dance? What do you learn from this? And he told me when his 25-year-old daughter committed suicide, tango saved his life because he didn't have to talk to anybody.
Mm.
You know, he could just be in the music and be in the embrace of a kind person.
Yes.
And I think that that's what life is about. Wouldn't we all be successful if we could be in a metaphoric embrace
Yeah.
in our businesses, our schools, our families, with people just accepting who we are?
You know, one of the things that I think I've learned is that sometimes when you hear some stress in a person's voice, don't just listen to the words, listen to the emotion.
Yes.
Listen to the emotion, because if you acknowledge the emotion as part of that conversation, then you give more depth to the words.
And the two suggestions that I offer throughout the book is
Yes.
to recognize what's the fear of this person?
Mhm.
why are they so angry, and why are they animated? And I myself get into fear too. What will they say? Will they like me? Will I succeed? Will I look stupid? And the other question, once you can step out of your body and really take a look at the fear of the other person, is to ask yourself the question, what would love do? How would love respond to a person who is afraid?
Yes.
Or a child who is crying? And I think that might open up our hearts as well and help us find the solution to that moment, if not the problem.
Yes.
And at least put us in another space.
Because one of the things I sort of adopted a philosophy is that I am responsible for my own emotions. Whether I'm upset or I'm not, whatever that emotion is, it's because of the thought process that's going on in my brain. And so I have this little voice in my head, I refer to it as the yammer, and I listen to that yammer and what it's saying. And sometimes I just have to tell my yammer to shut up, because it's giving me such negative thoughts. And so I will say, just, okay, I can turn that off, and I can redirect my thought process. And a kind of an example I would use is if somebody hit me from behind, and some young guy got out of there, 16 years old, young scrawny kid got out of there, how would I react to him? And then if I got out, that maybe it's some big guy that's 6'7", weighs 400 pounds, am I going to respond to that guy with the same kind of vitriolic anger I might express at a 16-year-old? Maybe not.
But I think what happens whenever we stretch,
Yes.
and we want to do something different, or we're inclined to follow our passion, or just risk a little bit, there's always going to be behind us, in the back of our head, critics. And in fact, one of the chapters in my book talks about turning the critics into cheerleaders. And one of the things that I learned to do, I used to live in Kailua. When I would come across the puli, is roll down all my windows and scream to all these guys in the back seat, the invisible voices, get out. And so...
Was this your yammer?
Yeah,
is this
my
like your
yammer. No, I can imagine, people driving through the tunnel now making a lot of noise, but it's a metaphor, if we just have to say, leave. What I did my whole life, I realized, is just push it down. I excused and rationalized and justified, and I denied feelings and betrayals and all that, and I kept pushing it down. You can't push it down because it comes out someplace else, either physically in an illness or emotionally with somebody. When you least expect it, you'll lash out for a toothpaste cover that's not, put on the tube.
That has never happened to me.
A cup that's not washed.
Yes.
So it behooves us to become a little more aware of ourselves.
Yes. And self-awareness, I think a lot of your book, and I really appreciate, and by the way, thank you for giving me a copy of your book.
You're welcome.
The thing that I found in your book is that it was sort of about your own journey of understanding who you are in your own life. But I think the idea that you've given people more principles and ideas for which they can stretch their own thoughts and understanding of themselves, I think is really wonderful that you took the time to do this. How long did it take you to write this book?
9 months.
9 months, wow.
From the first day I started, and with my publishing coach,
By the way,
coaching
your Patrick Stowe was on the show a couple
Yes.
weeks ago. So yes.
Wonderful coach.
Yes.
He's not a writing coach, but he's a process coach.
Yes.
And what I learned through being in that process with him as my coach is how I can better coach people, and how I can truly be for somebody and enable them to see their way without making it my way.
Yeah.
And as a former teacher and principal, right, single mother, I have a certain way that I want things done.
Yes.
It's a way. It doesn't
It's
always
a way.
work. It's a way.
It's a way.
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be the only way.
Exactly. Or my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get so principled, we get so attached to our way, and then that creates the conflict, and then we don't know how to deal with conflict, and it just gets very convoluted.
Mm-hmm. Well, mixed marriages are one of the challenges that we have in Hawaii. We have a lot of people that are, come from diverse cultures, and they come to Hawaii, and we call it a melting pot. Sometimes it's a smorgasbord. I'm not sure which.
I'd rather call it a salad.
They call it a salad. Okay. But we come together, and one of the things that makes relationships challenging is that we come from different perspectives. And what makes a multicultural relationship, having been in a couple myself, makes those work is you have to be open to other people's way of looking at the world. And I think one of the things that I see about your book is when you talk about opening to love, is that you have to be willing to be accepting of other people's perspective.
Yes, and if we even just remember what aloha is. Aloha is unconditional personal regard.
Yes.
So if I unconditionally accept who you are, it doesn't mean I like what you do.
Yeah.
And I may not even invite you for dinner, you know, or have a cup of coffee. That's my
Maybe
prerogative.
once.
Maybe. You know, but you have a right to be in this world.
Yes.
Just maybe not in my living room.
Yeah.
And so many of us want the other person to be the way we want them to be, so it's comfortable for us. And the more we know ourselves and our thresholds and our, you know, tolerance to certain behaviors, I think that that's the key. If I know me, then I can be more accepting or put my boundaries on how you are behaving with me.
Well, one of the things that I had said to me once is that you can be busy liking somebody or you can be busy judging somebody. But you can't do both at the same time. You have to decide what you're going to do. And if you decide that you're going to like somebody, you know, figure out what's good in them, and then you take on a more supportive position with them.
Yes, and judgment, if we might consider, is founded on fears.
Yeah.
I'm going to judge that what you do is wrong or because it's different. And if I don't know if I don't have the confidence to address differences, then I'm going to say that you're wrong. Because I have to hold my axis, I have to hold my strength.
That's right. And one of the rules is we don't make people wrong.
Well, and you have no right to make me wrong.
That's right.
So it's the dynamic of being human.
Yes.
And what I realized as I was writing the book is my whole life my mother prided herself on me becoming a lady.
Yes.
And ladies don't
And
cry.
by the way, you are a wonderful lady.
Thank you. They don't cry, they don't sweat, they don't swear, they don't get angry, they just hold themselves always together. And it was really quite a day when I learned to swear.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I knew I had reached being a woman, you know.
Well, I thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
on the show, Lyla. And how can people get a copy of your book?
You know, you can go on my website,
Okay.
www.leavingthegildedcage.com.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
thank you again, Lyla.
Thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you for appearing on ThinkTech.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody, and we'll see you next week right here on The Economy and You. Aloha.